Good evening, Milan Area Schools community. My name is Brian Gearbaugh, and I'm the superintendent of Milan Area Schools. And I'm here tonight to talk about two very important initiatives that will be on the November 5th ballot. The first item that I am going to talk about is the site sinking fund for Milan Area Schools. And the second item that I am going to talk about is the special education millage renewal for all of Washtenaw County. I want to thank everyone who's here this evening and thank those who watch the recording online. We have a couple of very important topics, and I appreciate the time that everyone dedicates to learning about these important initiatives. So again, the first thing to remember is that the election is on Tuesday, November 5th. Registered voters who are residents in the Milan Area School District can vote on the site sinking fund. You don't have to live in Washtenaw County to vote on the site sinking fund. You just have to live in the Milan Area School District. It's important when you vote this November to turn the ballot over. I say that because there are a lot of items on the ballot this year. A lot of the partisan items are on the front of the page, and then the initiatives are on the back of the page. So we ask that you make sure that you turn the ballot over when you go to vote. So what is a site sinking fund? A site sinking fund are millage funds that are approved and generated by school district residents. The funds provide school districts with dollars to pay for repairs and improvements as needed. It's important to understand that it's a funding system that protects school facilities by paying for school repairs and maintenance projects as they're completed. In other words, there's no borrowing, there's no interest payments, so it protects the funds in the district so that they can be used for other expenses. What can be paid for with site sinking funds? There are four main categories of items that can be paid for with site sinking funds. I'm going to explain those now, and then later in the presentation, I will be giving you some detail of the items that Milan Area Schools intends to use these funds for if the millage passes. It's also important to understand that the use of site sinking funds is highly regulated by the state of Michigan. Each year, the district would have to turn in an expenditure report that is then audited by the state of Michigan to make sure that all expenditures made each year fit the guidelines of a site sinking fund. So the four categories that site sinking funds can be used for are repair or construction of school buildings and to conduct site work, for school security improvements, for instructional technology. And instructional technology means either devices that are used by the students or devices that are used by the teachers to teach the students. And then the last category is pupil transportation expenditures. What cannot be paid for with site sinking funds? Employee salaries and benefits, consumable equipment and supplies, textbooks, utilities and operational expenses, routine maintenance like mowing, cleaning, and snow removal. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of what they can be used on and what they can't be used on. Now let's move on to some facts about site sinking funds. The site sinking fund for Milan Area Schools would provide us with dedicated funding to ensure a safe learning environment that's conducive to the educational process. And most importantly, it does this without diverting funds from instructional programs. In other words, it keeps more money in the classrooms by protecting the general fund. It does this in two ways. First, we would be able to pay for some items that are currently paid for out of the general fund. An example of that would be our student Chromebooks that we purchase each year, or the school bus that we purchase each year. We would be able to purchase those items with sinking fund dollars that would then alleviate the general fund from having to make those expenditures, which would allow more money to flow into the classroom. The second thing that can be done with these funds is to pay for unexpected expenses that would currently be paid for out of the general fund. An example of that would be to replace a roof, or to replace or repair a boiler if it went down in one of the buildings and we didn't have heat. So again, there are two different ways that site sinking funds can be used to protect general fund dollars. So what exactly are we asking? Milan Area Schools is asking our taxpayers to approve 1.5 mills for 10 years. In 2025, we estimate that that would generate approximately $1.2 million to help cover the costs for the items that we're going to discuss tonight. I do want to let you know that Milan Area Schools has no plan to purchase property or to construct entire new schools with these funds. While that is allowable, we have no intention of doing that. We might do small construction projects to improve our facilities, but we have no intent to construct a new school. It's also important to note that funds could be saved from year to year to cover the cost of a larger expenditure or repair down the road. So if you know you have a large project coming, a roof that's going to be $600,000, you wouldn't have to take all of that money out of 1 year. You could save a couple of $100,000 each of 3 years, allowing yourself to use some of that 1.2 million each year on other expenditures. So what's the cost to a taxpayer if the 1.5 mills is passed? I tried to give a few examples here. So if your house would sell for $250,000 on the market, that means that its approximate taxable value is $125,000, which means you would pay $187.50 a year in additional tax to help cover the site sinking fund. I know that it's difficult for us to ask for more tax dollars, so I do want to take some time tonight to explain to you exactly why Milan Area Schools is putting a site sinking fund on the ballot at this time. So what happens if it doesn't pass? I get asked this question a lot, and so I like to be very honest. Without the sinking fund, necessary repairs and improvements may be delayed or not completed at all, potentially leading to more costly issues or repairs down the road. Critical repairs would have to be prioritized. There are some things that we can't delay or not fix. If a boiler goes down and we don't have heat in a building, if a water main bursts and we have to replace it, those are things that we have to do. And right now, those would be paid for out of dollars intended to educate our students. So it's important to understand that we would have to prioritize some things and spend general fund dollars if this sinking fund doesn't pass. So I want to take a little bit of time to talk about our facilities and why we're going for a site sinking fund now. Everyone still thinks the high school that I'm standing in right now is new. And I want to thank our custodial staff for doing such a great job of taking care of this facility. And I understand that when you walk into the facility, it does appear to be fairly new. A lot of the issues that we're having are those behind the scenes things. They're the things that if your house is 20 years old, you need to think about fixing. A new furnace, a new air conditioner, replacing the roof, starting to re-pour your cement driveway or reseal your blacktop driveway. The things that you have to do to your house when it hits 20 years old are the same things that we have to do with our school facilities when they get to be that age. For some of you that have been around Milan for a longer point of time, the Milan Middle School competition gym, which a lot of people still refer to as the new gym, was built 27 years ago. Paddock Simons in the middle school, everybody feels, were just remodeled. That was 14 years ago that we remodeled those 3 buildings. All of our athletic venues are between 14 and 20 years old because they were either done with the 2010 remodeling or they were done when the high school was built and opened in 2004. I also want to stress that we're going for these funds not because we haven't maintained our facilities. We work hard every year to make sure that we keep our facilities up and functioning. We have long-term and short-term plans in place. Roofs are repaired and maintained every year. Parking lots are repaired and sealed on a 3-year cycle. Cement is repaired and replaced when it becomes unsafe. Carpet and flooring has been upgraded in a lot of the hallways in our buildings. Heating and cooling is repaired and upgraded as we can afford to do so. Athletic venues are repaired and upgraded. But at this time, all of those items are paid for out of the general fund using dollars that are intended to educate our students. So what are the plans Milan Area Schools intends to do specifically? 1, replace roofs. The middle school is probably the worst for this. Several of those roofs, when we did the remodel 14 years ago, weren't old enough to need to be replaced. We're now 14 years farther down the road, and there are large sections of the middle school roof that need to be replaced. Our air conditioner and boilers at the high school are 20 years old. And for anybody that works in the building or spends time in the building regularly, you know that we struggled with the temperature in the building because our boilers and chillers are over 20 years old. We have a parking lot that we need to replace at the high school. We've done a lot of maintenance on our parking lots, and they've outlasted a lot of parking lots that have the same age as ours do. But we do have one parking lot at the high school that does need to be replaced. We need to resurface gym floors. We actually had to do the high school gym floor this year. We couldn't wait to see if the sinking fund passed. It had to be done. But we do have other gyms in the district that will need that same care over the next 5 to 10 years. We need to upgrade to more energy efficient lighting. The high school cafeteria is going to get all new lighting this year because we have so many of the lights in the cafeteria that have become damaged or no longer work, that it's almost more expensive to repair them all than it is to come in and put new LED lighting in that also saves on our utility bills. We need to repair and replace sidewalks. You see this? We take very good care of our sidewalks. If they become damaged, we fix them. We don't want trip hazards. We don't want anybody getting hurt. But again, cement work is expensive. We need to replace school signage. Many of you probably noticed that the electronic part of the high school sign doesn't work. And this summer, the electronic part of the paddock sign stopped working. Not because they weren't maintained, it's just they're old. And we want to be able to provide good information to our folks as they enter our buildings. About a month ago, we also had a major leak in the water main going to Milan Middle School. Luckily, the city was there to help us and to repair that main, but it's the part that's on our property, so it's really our responsibility. The main is over 50 years old and needs to be completely replaced. Due to when the building was built, the main is under the building. So it's going to mean trenching an entire new route from Marvin all the way into the utility room at the middle school, probably costing somewhere between $150,000 and $200,000. Again, these are real costs, real things that we have to do that we would like to not have to spend educational dollars to take care of. We also want to replace some playgrounds. Some of you that use the paddock playground with your little kids throughout the school year and through the summer have probably noticed that it's starting to get worn and pieces are damaged. We replace them. We make sure that it's always safe and meets the standards it has to meet. But again, it's getting to be the point of time in its life cycle that we need to replace some of those playgrounds. What are some things that we might do with our athletic facilities? We need to resurface our track. That doesn't mean that we need to dig the whole track up and lay all new blacktop underneath. What we need to do is put a new seal coat on top and then repaint all of the markings. Again, this is a $70,000 to $80,000 expense. But if you don't do it and you let it go longer, then you are going to have the expense of probably a $750,000 track replacement. We need to replace our tennis courts. For those that play tennis, those tennis courts are becoming cracked and they're getting to the point where they will soon become unplayable. We also need to add an additional 4 tennis courts. Almost every high school has 8 tennis courts because that's how many it takes to play a match effectively. Our matches take twice as long because we have to play them in 2 cycles. We need to replace our swimming starting blocks. And this is a perfect example of what happens when we don't have the funds to take care of some of these things. Our swim team has started a large fundraiser to help replace those starting blocks. That's some of the things that we do to be creative in Milan area schools to replace things when we need them and maybe can't afford them. We need to replace the baseball bleachers. You can see a beautiful picture on the screen of those old baseball bleachers when they were installed. They were gorgeous. They were wonderful. We maintained them. Michigan winters heaved the wood deck and it became unsafe. So we had to remove those bleachers. We do have a slab of cement poured, but we don't have the aluminum bleachers installed yet. Again, that's another cost that we would like to not take out of the general fund dollars intended for education. Transportation is that next category that you can use site sinking funds on. Milan Area Schools purchases 1 or 2 buses annually. You can also purchase bus parts, supplies, and equipment as needed with these funds. To give you a little bit of an understanding, up until 2 years ago, each school bus we purchased cost about $110,000. New regulations over the last couple of years were put on school buses. The factories closed down, they retooled, and they're building a whole new bus with more safety features that are required. And I am hearing that the cost of buses next year, when we need to start purchasing again, are going to be north of $220,000 a bus. That means in a given year when we need to purchase 2, that's almost $500,000 spent on school buses. What would we like to do with our technology? We'd like to upgrade our classroom display devices. Most of them are 15 to 20 years old. The technology is outdated and it no longer works. We need to replace our teacher desktops so that they can run the newest software and allow our teachers to teach our students in the most effective manner. We need to replace our classroom sound amplification systems for all students and for our students who have difficulty hearing. We need to rewire our classrooms with HDMI video because we're currently using VGA video and new technology doesn't work on VGA video. And again, we work hard here to have a one-to-one environment in our district where every student has a device, and we need to replace those devices or a section of those devices every year because the life expectancy of a Chromebook is about 4 to 5 years. What are some of our plans for safety? We want to implement safety recommendations from an independent safety audit that we had done 2 years ago. We've done some of this work already with safety dollars the state gave us. We replaced our entire security camera system throughout the district and expanded it. And we also replaced all of the door locks in the classrooms to make them easier to lock when we have an emergency in the building. Some things that we would like to consider doing are construct more secure entry vestibules. We have a buzzer system on every door right now, but once a person is buzzed in, they can enter the building immediately. We'd like to, where possible, have it where they come into the office when they're buzzed in, and then if necessary, they get buzzed into the building. That's the way new school buildings are being constructed. We want to install safety cameras on our buses. You're probably aware that we have safety cameras inside the buses, but we actually need cameras on the outside of the buses to catch those folks that are running through our stop signs and causing an incredibly unsafe situation for our students who get off the bus and then need to cross the road. We need to replace our intercom and bell systems in the buildings so that we can deliver messages to our students when we have an emergency or want to make daily announcements. We would like to install an internal emergency alert system or a panic button that connects directly to the Milan Police Department so that we could alert them if we were having an issue. And we'd like to improve and upgrade our door access controls so that our perimeter of our buildings are safe and kept locked at all times. Again, I want to talk a little bit about some things that I've heard in the community as I've been talking about this. One is that a site sinking fund is a partisan vote. There's no truth to that. There's no party line about a site sinking fund. It's really about, do we want to take care of our facilities with dollars that don't come from the general fund to educate our kids? I've heard that we're just going to fix all of our athletic facilities so that schools of choice students can use them. Yes, we do have schools of choice students in our district, but they're not overpowering our teams. Our students still get to play. Our in-district students still get to play. And there are very few sports where we even cut. I've also heard that Milan area schools will use the money for whatever and however they want to use it. That's not possible. These funds are regulated heavily by the state. There are 4 categories that you are allowed to use them on. And I've listed some very specific examples of how Milan area schools would intend to use these funds. Again, please remember that Tuesday, November 5th is Election Day. Passing a site sinking fund will help us stay competitive with surrounding districts that already have site sinking funds and aren't spending general funds to cover these expenses. Remember, anyone that's a registered voter who lives in Milan area schools can vote. And again, I'll remind you, turn the ballot over because there are some very important initiatives on the back of the ballot. Thank you. Now, if you give me a minute, I am going to move on to the presentation for the special education millage, which is also very important. And this is actually a renewal, but I do want to provide you with some information so that you understand why we are asking for a special education millage renewal in Washtenaw County. So first, remember, even though this is a special education millage, this will truly help every student every day. And I will help you to understand that as we go through the presentation. Again, the vote is on November 5th, and it will be on the back of the ballot. What is the question that the county is asking for? We are asking you to renew 2.3826 mills for 12 years. This is a renewal. It would not be an increase in your tax rate. This is something we've been paying for over 10 years already. Who is impacted? More than 6,000 students in the county, or 1 out of every 7 students from preschool through age 26, receive some type of special education support. Plus nearly 900 children who are age birth to 3 receive special education services before entering preschool. Special education in Milan area schools. In Milan area schools, 1 in 6 students receive special education services. Last year, with the millages and the reimbursements that we received, we brought in $3.275 million in special education funding. If this millage is not renewed, Milan will lose over $2 million of that funding. It's important to understand that special education services are required. So it's not an option to say, well, that's what we'll cut if we don't get this money. If this millage doesn't pass, we still have to provide special education services by state and federal law. So that means that we will have to find $2 million inside our $30 million budget that we have as a school district. Again, why is it needed? Special education is mandated for every child from birth to age 26, and they are not fully funded. Current state and federal reimbursements cover 37% of special education costs, even though they're mandated by law. Washtenaw County special education millage provides another 61% of our special education costs, meaning that we have 98% of those expenses covered by the millage or by state and federal reimbursements. If we lose that 61%, it will be devastating to Milan area schools. So how does it benefit all students? Again, the renewal would preserve general fund dollars. If this renewal does not pass, $57 million of local district expenses would now have to be covered with the general fund dollars that we receive from the state for mandated services. Millage dollars also stay local. Every dollar collected through this millage stays in Washtenaw County, and it is distributed proportionately to the 9 school districts based on the number of students they have. So there's no concept of, well, we're going to pay and that money's going to go to another district. The funds are distributed proportionately to the districts based on their pupil counts and their expenditures. So again, dollars paid for by Milan taxpayers will be looped back to Milan area schools. Who receives special education services in Michigan? Sometimes folks that don't live in the education world don't understand all of the different labels and concerns that special education students can have. So here's a list of those students and the different classifications that they can fall in. And some of these require more services and some of these require less services. Again, I'm not going to read the entire list, but remember, in Michigan, we have to cover special education costs from birth to age 26 for students that have any of these impairments. And they range from learning disabilities to autism, to a visual impairment, a hearing impairment, or an emotional impairment. Who would the millage support? It supports those students with learning disabilities that we just talked about. It supports our second largest group of students in the county, which are speech and language impaired. So it helps students with their ability to properly speak the English language. And the remaining amount of students with disabilities range from mild to severe. It will help all of those students. And remember, it doesn't just help those students. Again, by protecting general fund dollars, it helps every student because we don't have to spend general fund dollars to cover these expenses if the millage money is available. What services would the millage support? It supports early on services for students age 0 to 3. It allows for blending learning environments, speech and physical occupational therapy supports, transition supports for students as they move on to work, life, or college, assistive technology for those students that need devices to help communicate or to comprehend, nursing, school psychologists, and school social workers are all paid for with these funds. It allows us to provide high quality professional learning for our educators and our students. What staff would the millage support? It would support all special education teachers, all special education paraprofessionals, teacher consultants that assist staff with teaching special needs students in their gen ed classrooms, and special education leaders and administrative support throughout the county. Why now? Washtenaw County previously approved 2 different special education millages. We designed those 2 millages to expire at the same time in 2025. So we are now combining those 2 millages into one, but we are not adding any additional requests. Again, this millage is 100% renewal, and we are asking for those funds for 12 years. Again, what does it mean if approved? Let's be very clear. It doesn't change your tax rate. It's a renewal. Again, if you have a house that sells for $300,000 and has a $150,000 taxable value, it will cost you $29.78 a month. And again, that's a continuation of that expense that you've already been paying if you're a taxpayer in Washtenaw County or any part of another county that lies within the Washtenaw Intermediate School District. Again, this is very important for Milan to understand that our taxpayers who live in Monroe County but send their students to Milan area schools are allowed to vote on this initiative and will pay the taxes if this initiative passes. Again, what's it estimated to cost Milan if it's not renewed? Approximately $2.2 million in lost funding. Again, last reminder, the millage will be on the ballot on Tuesday, November 5th. Anyone who lives in one of those school districts is allowed to vote, and we ask that you turn the ballot over. If you have any questions or you'd like to learn more, the Intermediate School District is offering several informational sessions. You can use this QR code or call that number to find out those dates and times and to gain more information on the special education millage. I just want to thank everyone who's here tonight and thank those who are listening to the recording and taking the time to gain that knowledge on 2 very important initiatives for Milan area schools and Washtenaw County. Thank you and have a good evening.